the more I'm watching this, and this is not sphincter puckering syndrome, so don't you get at me. I I'm closer to the conclusion from Oklahoma, who I thought was really good, to Central Michigan, who I don't think was very good at all. I still think, in the same way I look at Nebraska's upward ascent, Michigan, I think, is better than it feels like they're better than we're talking about. Agree or disagree? Or do you feel like they're given enough respect?
No, I think they're getting better. I think the biggest thing you've seen, obviously, the biggest thing that jumps out on the screen is Underwood. Like the passing numbers looked a lot better in the box score. You saw the uptick in carries in the box score. You saw the yardage, the touchdown, right? So they're obviously getting better, offensively. I think they've figured out, and I think we exchanged the message we talked about. Is like the one thing I'm worried about, they start running them beginning with Central Michigan going into Nebraska. And even the interim head coach even said it, in a quote that hey, he has freedom to run, whatever. So I think they're kind of understanding, hey, there may be some pro style stuff we want to do that he may not be able to conceptualize as far as the progressions. So let's do what's going to help
Or
us
that
better.
they can block up front.
Or they can block up front, right? They had some injuries on the inside the guard. They lost a very good offensive tackle early in the preseason. So I think it wasn't only him getting comfortable; it was that offensive line getting comfortable too, and then the staff figuring out, okay, what can they do? What can they execute at a high level and consistently? And I think you've seen it with the bootlegs. You saw even more quick passing game, which I think would be something that'd be really good to get those tight ends involved underneath linebackers.
Yeah.
Um, so you're seeing not only the progression of the players, right, but you're also seeing the staff understanding, hey, this is what we got this year, and we're going to create a great game plan for them week in, week out. And I think Michigan's kind of finding their groove with that play calling and just the concept they're using consistently to give Underwood 1 to 2 reads, cut the field in half, um, but now also add in the element of his legs. That's where they become a little bit more dynamic.
Michael, what do you think Nebraska is capable or has shown you defensively that could give Michigan trouble?
I think, and I listened to the first half of it, and I think we're dead on with dang near everything you guys have said so far. Like DB said, I'm not worried schematically if Nebraska has it in their bag to do what I think I've seen
Right.
that Oklahoma did, obviously at a very high level with very elite players. What I saw in glimpses of New Mexico, that New Mexico game was tough. It wasn't a straight, hey, we knocked them out, right? Just like Nebraska's first
Yeah,
game wasn't
it
straight.
was grimy.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was a little grimy, right? And I thought they did some really, really good things to put on film for Oklahoma to take advantage of and use as far as with the stunts and the movements and things like that. So I'm not worried about him schematically. Like you said, DB, Dewey got the Jimmys and Joes, right? There's going to be able to hold up, go and stunt through gaps, get those type of movements consistently while creating penetration. And then getting guys to the ground, like you said, that's like the biggest thing is like, can we tackle? Can we get guys on the floor? And from all three levels, right? The two vowels and one consonant, right? The yak, yards after contact. That's going to be the biggest stat probably you're going to look at in the game.
I agree.
Um, you know, so I think that's going to be important. They got to get hats to the ball, but again, I think it's gonna be it's gonna be a, like DB said. I think it's gonna be a very very close ball game. Big 10, 2:30 slugfest. Right, first 1 to 20 probably is gonna do it. It's gonna take a big drive at the end. It's gonna be close. So I think they're prepared for it schematically. But again, those Jimmys and Joes got to be able to hold up and be disciplined in their assignments, but also be aggressive as heck. I mean, that's what I saw from the little tape I put out. Just kind of what do you guys think that Nebraska has to do? A lot of it's a lot of movement up front, but their second and third level players in those clips are flying into their fit, right? They're getting down into the gaps, right?
I was
And
saying
that's the
that.
only way you can get guys off those doubles,
They
right?
they they
If you
they they, they buzz hump, man, on that second
yeah,
level.
yeah, what I mean, and that has to be something we've seen in spurts from Nebraska, but it's really about seeing that consistently and seeing that down out.
Let me ask you something about if you're going against this offensive line against Michigan. Nebraska's kind of shown they want to play a different, not a different way, but they've shown they want to play a certain way in terms of
Mhm.
movement, right? Putting guys on the move. When you watch how Michigan moves, how apt would you to be to continue with that philosophy versus playing it a little more straight up?
Continue the philosophy.
Oh,
I think that
okay, putting them
yeah,
on the move.
because
Okay.
I think it's been what they've been doing already. Um, it's something that I think has given, especially like you talk about the interior having the injuries at guard, doing some flip flop there. That interior movements, stun the nose and tackles, those type of things. Talk about how great Desan is, crashing across the face of tight ends and tackles. Again, that's the recipe. That's what I've seen, right? And I look at it like the analogy of, right, obviously, internet's very vast and wide. We can go find any recipe in the world we want from a five-star restaurant, right? But do we have the means to fully prepare it, right? And I think the recipe is there for what gives often the Michigan offensive line some problems and frustrates them. It's can we replicate it, right?
Yeah.
Can we replicate not the bodies, but the success, the results, the 1 to 2 yard gains on first down, getting them in second and 8, knowing they're probably gonna go bootleg or probably gonna do something to get them out the pocket. And now we can dictate with our pressure, hey, we want Underwood to go here, or we want him to stay there. And I think that's again, Ravi said it too. I mean, a lot of credit. I got some Michigan guys on Twitter that talk about how great Venables was, and we can't duplicate that coaching. But again, he's got 10 years in the NFL. Like he's seen some ball. Like you know what I mean. So we gotta also understand that he's a guy that understands defense. He understands how offenses want to attack his defense. And like you said, I loved his demeanor in the press conference.
He
Even
was
when asked about
he
the
quietly, right? Like, can you
yeah.
feel he knows?
He knows. Oh yeah, he knows. I mean, even how he answered the question about, Underwood running more. He said, yeah, he had 2 designed runs and 6 of them were scrambles.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? It's like, okay, we've prepared for this and you talk about how big that staff is. You can't tell me eyes haven't been on this game for the
Yeah.
past 2 weeks, right? Some GA's been in the basement, right, with the hanging light swinging, right, digging into every single thing he can find. Like, I mean, I feel like there's a psychological confidence that I haven't felt in a big game like this since going back to Colorado. But like you said, DB, that was different. I think we knew we were better,
Yeah.
right? And I think this time, obviously, it's Michigan, right? We're not playing the brand, but it's Michigan, right? It's a different mindset of ball, different way they do, just a different mentality than the finesse we see in a lot of teams. So you got to give them that respect. But it tells you a lot with that point spread is 1.5, DB. It tells you a lot. It tells you a lot. There's some confidence. There's some confidence outside of that building, right, in Memorial Stadium that's saying, hey, I think Nebraska has a chance at least to keep this close and have a fighter's chance at the end to win this ball game.
Let me ask you something about um schematics, right? You talked
Mhm.
about boot and getting him on the edge where he's got a couple of different options. By he, I mean Underwood.
Right.
I One of the sneaky things, and I get it, man. Wink's got a ton of NFL experience, right? And Dylan is going to be a Sunday quarterback.
Mhm.
But from a pressure guy like Wink and a stationary target like Dylan, I'm not sure that's as advantageous as a guy like Butler who coached opposite the locker room from Josh Allen,
Right.
who who
Saw it
wasn't
every day.
afraid who wasn't afraid to lead the Bills in rushing at
Mhm.
early in his career, right? So
Right.
I think schematically from pressures and not letting quarterbacks do the dictating
Mhm.
on, I just feel like that's a lot where that Rolodex and that vault comes from, right? I
Man,
mean,
yeah, yeah.
he's had to defend Mahomes. Like I just think,
Lamar
and
Jackson. Look, we're not
I'm
even talking
yeah,
about
right.
Lamar.
Yeah, and
You know.
I'm not comparing Underwood to Mahomes like across the board, but what I'm saying,
Right.
quarterbacks that are very good off script,
Mhm.
which is what Underwood's shown. He wasn't bad off script, right? So I just think he has a lot of that in his teaching bag.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like you said, I mean, you know how fall camp is and training camp is. I mean, it's us versus us, right? So if I'm going against Josh Allen, we got some different type of, flush type packages. We're gonna push you to the left because we know you don't like to roll to the left and throw. You're a little bit less accurate, right? We got some things that can, so as far as spies and other stunts that we can use with just 4 guys to keep you contained in the pocket. So like you said, he has a deep Rolodex, and I think again, he hasn't fully proven himself to be a national name as far as a defense coordinator at the college level just yet. But I mean, he has the experience. You can't just look past that. Just like Wink has that experience at the NFL. Like I think you look at these guys, and that's a different level of preparation. I mean, that's all ball, no recruiting. You know what I mean? Front office handles that, right? I just coach who's in my room. You get what I'm saying? And I think that's one thing that's one of my favorite things about this matchup too is going to be that chess match between those two guys, and just how they're going at each other, how they're making their adjustments and things like that. But that's again, it's a lot of game within the game type of things within this one, which makes it going to be a great game.
What do you think about? I apologize.
No, you're good.
Sorry. What do you think about how Nebraska lines up defensively? We talked about that tight front, and this was early. I'm shoot, man. I might be all the way going back to Sunday or Monday talking to you, MRI. But
Hmm.
how do you think Nebraska lines up defensively with some of these fronts that we're now seeing? And walk us through where guys line up when we're talking about tight fronts as it relates to some of the things schematically that Oklahoma did.
Yeah, Oklahoma did. They was in a lot of that tight front. Just putting guys right in the B gap, right? So you got those guys playing right inside eye of that tackle, right? Playing the tackle but kind of filling the guard, right? So the thing about that, I mean, you have to have some skilled guys there. You have those guys that can hold a point because you're almost essentially two gapping from an inside shade, right? When you're doing
And
when you're playing
you're
that.
giving up your angles too.
Yeah, you get up your angles, and for a team like Michigan, power, duo, counter, all angle blocks, right? I don't need much vertical push. I need you down the line, right? So, I think with Nebraska, they've shown a little bit of that. I saw it more versus I think last week and maybe some versus Cincinnati than we did this previous week. But still, I think it's something that's in their package or something they'll need to use. So the biggest thing is it declares those fits. Right now, we can expand if we need to, right? We get those motions and things like that, right? We can play our Mike backer in that C gap, backside will in the A gap, and still be protected. Because again, when you're working off those counters and duos, right, they're downhill plays, but eventually the C gap gets to where the A gap started. If that makes sense,
Yeah,
if you
they
can
they
visually
mo-
see
they
that.
they move. They yeah.
Yeah.
For our
Yep.
listeners,
Yep. So
they,
exactly right. So if you can have leverage in that gap, so when it goes down, instead of me having to get over the top, and I'm already in position to just strike downhill and be aggressive. That's what you saw from Oklahoma. And what I did see in the Oklahoma film, they did use some three safety rotation with their run fits and stuff like that, and getting those guys down there. So I think it's gonna be something you'll see. I think Nebraska's gonna move in and out of a 3-4 man front, run some plug pressures, bring in five, right? I really have to think the confidence of the secondary and especially two guys on the outside. And I mean, I think Michigan's Michigan. They have some good talent at receiver, but I don't think it's overwhelming. I think their biggest matchup problem for us is going to be those two tight ends.
yeah,
They made some freakish catches. They made some consistent catches, especially if they get the run game going, play action over the middle. You guys talked about that earlier. But I think on the outside. I think they feel confident that hey, if it got to the point where we got to play 7-8 and just man it up, and when my fit is my fit, I think they feel confident that they can at least protect themselves on the outside. And if it takes us having to be that aggressive, we can live with those guys being on the island. So I think that's the confidence that Butler has as well, and hopefully that we get those guys in those second and long situations so we can really confuse that offensive line. They've given up quite a few pressures in all three games. And even not giving up pressures, there's some links there that I think is that we can take advantage if we put the right guys in the right situations. And biggest thing is keeping Underwood in the pocket.
So, Michael, I'm curious on the other side of things with what Michigan likes to do defensively and what we know or what we think we know about Dylan Raiola. Obviously, the mobile component that we're talking about with Underwood isn't going to be nearly the same factor. But
Mhm.
if you're a if you're a defensive guy and you're trying to figure out what to do with a quarterback that has a super high processing level, both pre and post snap, what do you do if you're Michigan?
I think they have to believe that they can be able to win some one-on-ones up on at the O line, versus our O line. I think they're going to be confident with that just coming in naturally. Which lends you to be able to, have seven in coverage. Right now, you got 3-over-2, 4-over-3, right? However you want to do it. So you have more guys that's in coverage, right? So I think that's kind of the difference between Nebraska's defense and Michigan's defense going into it. That I feel like they feel a little more confident they can get pressure with four. And so they can lend themselves to play back in coverage. Really the philosophy a lot of defense are going to, hey, we're gonna stop the pass and then stop the run. Meaning our pass coverage fits are gonna take us to our run fits instead of
Yes.
us thinking heavy in our run
Stop
fits
the run and
and the other
routine
way
it to
around.
the quarterback.
Yeah, yep, the old school mentality, you know what I mean? So you I mean, it's a numbers thing, and you think less is more, right? The less you can fit in the run and stop the run, the better defense you are. If you have to obviously bring more bodies into it, then you lose those guys on pass coverage. But I think as far as with Dylan, I think obviously there's two ways you beat blitzes and beat coverage or beat pressure, right? Either with hot reads or with your feet. Dylan can do the latter a little bit. And I think you talk about that processing. I think that's where him and Dana are going to have a solid game plan against, hey, where are we going when we see these looks? I think Dylan has seen enough reps that he understands the structures of those coverages and things like that. I'm going into the game thinking he's going to make the right decision. 7 out of 10 times, 8 out of 10 times, right, and get the ball to the right guy. I think having this receiver skill set, I don't think we've had as far as a consistent 2 to 3 guys I think we go to really in quite a while that, we were able to spread the wealth, right? We don't have just one target, right? Also with Lindenmeyer at tight end too. Heinrich, he's kind of getting back into his groove too. I think there's a lot of options for him to be able to throw the football. The biggest thing is, can we run the football to make him not have 40 attempts by the end of the game? I think that's the biggest thing, and controlling the time of possession, or not necessarily time of possession, but not going 3-and-out consecutive drives, putting our defense back on the field, and knowing that at the end of the day, if all things goes wrong with Underwood in the passing game, he's too rattled. 13 personnel, duo left, duo right. And it's a long football game. Come on,
Yeah,
you know
then
it,
you start
DB.
getting
It's
into
a long,
time possession, man.
yeah.
Yeah,
Then you
like
start losing, yeah, yeah, and that's what we can't get into. But I think this offense is dynamic enough. I think Dana has a good pulse on what Dylan can do. And that we have some good receivers. Again, can we protect? Can we run the football and be efficient there? Hopefully break a couple that gets the pressure, pushing those guys back, and then really kind of get into a groove of things. But I think tempo could be a really key thing for Nebraska's offense, just to give Michigan a little unbalanced, especially or off balance early on in the game. So I'm expecting to see that them to kind of get them in one or two base looks, kind of take advantage of some quick throws, get the ball out early, kind of get Dylan as the point guard, get everybody an assist, and then we can really get to what our true game plan is um, throughout the rest of the game.
perfect guy to ask. I talk a lot about offset backs versus pistol and
Yep.
kind of with zone, it's just slow right to left. And I just imagine this is a game where Coach Holgerson and this offense is kind of in their bag a little bit, where
Mhm.
you've already shown you sprinkled in some QB run game, but not you also have two back action out of the backfield. Walk me through the degree of difficulty from your vantage point playing inside when you see offset versus pistol or downhill run game,
Mhm.
and then how a second running dynamic influences that as well.
Yeah, I think you talk about Michigan specifically, right? They kind of add that second dynamic in the backfield as a receiver, right? Using orbit motion or even just motion them across, and he'll kick out the end or even lead up on the end sometimes, or up on the backer, right? When you talk about pistol, right, and I think when you talk, let's first talk about gun offsets. I think pistol, obviously, that's you get two-way go there. You don't really understand or know, you don't give a knowing key coming out where the ball's going. But when you talk about offset, right, especially when you're looking at Michigan and what they like to do, just as much as they like to run zone, obviously away from that back, they like duo as well. They like counters going back to the same side, right? So I think you have to first understand, what do they like to do in offset, right? Because at the end of the day, it gets back to kind of being pistol, giving them a two-way go, right? So I think when you look at specifically this week, when they line up offset, I'm thinking about it. Not a lot of run games come out of the shotgun really with them. If
Listen,
I if I if I really think about it, it's either
but
been pistol or under center.
that's my point.
Yeah.
Like,
Now I think about it. I'm just kind of trying to go through clips
what
in my head.
we weren't
Not a
really
lot of
supposed to say that out loud with tendencies, but like, that's what I do for a living. And I'm like, I think Nebraska can get a bead. And
yeah.
then conversely, I think Coach Holgerson, I think he can go to his bag with two back looks,
Right.
utilizing front side handoff action, and then getting out and RPOing the other way. I think there are some very, very strong tendencies that Michigan does when they're on offense. And I
Hmm.
Nebraska can utilize some good tendency breakers from when
Yeah.
they're on.
No, for sure. No, I agree. And this, week 4 is about the week when you start breaking down those things and kind of trying to, hey, what can we show that looks the same as we did week 2 or 3? Obviously, the films they've
Because
seen
that
the
was
recently.
Michigan's whole trick when they were operating at a high level, right? I mean, there
Yeah.
were slight differences, but everything kind of looked
And
the
there
same.
that is still there for there that is still there for them for sure. I mean, they synchronize plays very, very well. A lot of looks like, looks the same as type of concepts, and I think motion is the new complexity for offenses right nowadays, right? Just motion a guy, and now it's a whole different play for a second level defender or third level defender. So, I think on both sides, I look at like I said, think back in Michigan, a lot of pistol and under center runs right now, a lot of shotgun stuff, and then for Nebraska, I think they could utilize more pistol this week, to take those
Oh,
initial keys away from those linebackers.
it's just tough, right? It just
Yeah,
changes. It just changed. I mean, because when you're used to seeing flow, fast or slow versus direct, it's different.
right.
It affects your eyes differently,
Yep.
as an inside guy.
And I think on every one of Haynes' biggest run, I think they were all off of some type of, wide receiver motion, type of thing. And, you know, getting the
How they,
cornerback in the fit on some of them,
yeah, you see how they put your boy from Oklahoma in the run fit when on that cutback
yeah,
on
yep,
the
yep.
long run.
Safety overran it. I mean, everybody safety overran it, cornerback just sat backside. He was frozen. I mean, he didn't know what to do,
He
you
split
know.
two free. He split two free runner hitters for 80.
Yeah, yeah.
It
Shoot, I
was
want to say
incredible.
three. I want to say it was three DB. I think they had another safety stacked behind the other guy. Like it was one of those like sheesh. You won't
I
like watching that one on Saturday or
Yeah.
Sunday.
So that Monday, MRI. Just lets you know just how we're on sync. I said Oklahoma's probably kicking themselves that they gave up that score because schematically you can't draw
They
that
were
up different
right,
any better, right? Except
right.
your two high, three third level guys had the same fit, and your corner froze.
Hmm.
And Haynes he was super decisive, so he just hit it and
Yeah,
split.
yeah. He's really good, right? I know.
He
I got some
is.
Michigan fans. I've got some Michigan fans that found my thread and they think I'm dogging him because I said he had 51% of his yardage on 3 runs, but he's got really, really good balance, good vision. Like you said, he's decisive. Within their scheme, obviously you have small creases within those power and duo stuff, and you gotta, like you said, you either gotta hit it, read the linebacker and hit it, or bounce it outside, right? And he's done a really good job of that. By far, yeah, the best back they've seen and may see throughout the year. I think until you get to Penn State's gonna have a really, really good one too. But he's a solid back. I think Marshall, the backups, even he's just as good. He broke a run last week. They got called back for a holding on a duo play, and I mean it was the eye of the needle how tight that was, and he split it, broke it out to the sideline. So, their backs are solid, and even with this not being what I would say, is just comparable to the offensive line we've seen the past couple years from Michigan. It's not at that level. Yeah, you got some guys that are just getting their first time starting, really getting in position and things like that. These backs do a great job of BYOB. They do a great job of BYOB and being their own blockers, and finding little creases and getting those little extra 2 to 3 yards off of what you look like. Hey, it should have been stopped at the line of scrimmage.
There's two things that I'm glad Nebraska has seen pre-Michigan. Number one was Edwards from Houston Christian last week
Yep.
because he's nice. Like
Oh yeah, SEC. SEC.
he is nice. He's
He's gonna
squatty
be gone
body.
next year.
He's decisive, and he's got really good balance. So I'm glad Nebraska got a chance to see him. And then the other
Yep.
one is Sorsby because
Yeah.
ultimately I think that's how they can use Underwood.
Yeah.
Um, and I think Nebraska will be fortunate having seen Sorsby and Edwards because I think you'll get that in Underwood and
Mhm.
Haynes.
Yeah, no,
That-
I think one of the things that would have made that Cincinnati game even more interesting if they would have used their tight end more. You know,
Well, they see
he's a
Nebraska neutralized Roy, and he's
yeah,
another Sunday guy. Like
yeah,
Roy
yeah,
is legit,
yeah.
and Nebraska
He's a
took him
solid
away.
tight end. And so I think that gives them confidence too. And it'll be interesting to see because Cincinnati, I think game plan initially was like, hey, we think we can throw the ball a little bit against Nebraska. You know, we're going to be a little bit more diverse, and it got to more of a narrow mindset with, hey, Sorsby, you keep the ball, you find a way to make a play. And it'd be interesting to see if Michigan just says, hey, you know, this is Underwood's breakout game, right? Everyone's saying, you know, this, that, and the other, right? This is breakout game where they say, hey, we're going to stick to what we do and just run the football. So, you know, that's going to be another interesting thing. How do they start out? Are they saying, hey, we need to get him off on the right, you know, the right path and get him some confidence early on? Or is it, hey, we're going to get that through getting big gains in the, or, you know, just minimal or big gains in the run game, and then we can set up our play action?
Mm.
Michael, you know, we've a lot of people have talked about kind of this idea that Nebraska has been playing kind of vanilla on both sides of the ball. How much do you think Nebraska's maybe held back for this game in particular versus things that they've wanted to put on tape?
I don't, I don't I don't know. I'll tell you, I'll be honest. I don't really watch offensive tape as far as reviewing the offense. You know, I watch the games obviously, but I think they offensively has a clean, you know, a good amount of concepts that they think are clean looks for Dylan. They have a
Yeah.
good enough amount of concepts that they feel like their O-line can run. I think everything's out there as far as the concept. Now, again, motion is the new complexity of offense now, right? So different motions, formations, how we set it up, what's the sequencing of the play calls. I think for Nebraska's offense is where they can kind of take that next level and show something a little bit different, right? Although it being the same concepts. Um, as far as you know, the defense, I think again, I think they've shown who they want to be and what they want to do. Um, I think it's just a matter of seeing against a good opponent. You know what I mean, Robbie? Like I think that's what everyone's just waiting for. Like, okay, what can we take from the first three games, right? Against, whatever, however you want to label the opponents. What can we take from those first three games and hang our hat on? Because we're in Big Ten play, right? We're on the train. The train has left the station, right? We know who's on the train. We know who can't handle himself on the train. We know who can handle himself. Like we understand the hierarchy, right? Of our team and everyone's roles, right? Now it's just a matter of putting the pieces together every week to make sure, right, we're still on the same track, right? So I think both sides have shown their identity, who they want to be. Can we execute it? Right. That's just the biggest thing, especially against a good opponent.